I've been making sourdough bread since October 2021. Let me share you 10 things I've learned during that time. Number 1. You don't have to discard starter at all. I make bread with all the starter, I don't save for the fridge. I know that's not possible if you want to weigh everything and use the exact gram amount of ingredients. However, that's not how I make my loaves. I feed my starter twice and then make the levain with all the starter I have that far, with leaving enough in the original jar. No need to throw anything away or having to figure out where to put the discard. Number 2. All the recipes are not the same level of difficulty. I have tried probably only 3 bread recipes this far and a couple of sweet pastry recipes, and I don't feel like exploring anymore at the moment. I find it kinda hard, to be honest. My go-to recipe is Emily Faith's bread recipe, which I've modified to make without a scale. I have a video of how I do it, I'll link it to the description. Kneading feels too much work, and having to be at home ready to stretch and fold every 30 minutes or so, it's just not my jam. With the sweet pastries, I've found it hard to bake them and not get dry. I guess that's also a matter of practice. I use mix of wheat, rye and oats for my breads, which makes the gluten structure kind of weak and not able to stretch anyway. Number 3. You can make it work without fancier kitchen supplies. I'm here to tell you that you don't need to go out and buy all these gadgets, proofing baskets, rice flour, bench scrapers, whisks, thermometers, gazillion mason jars, cooling racks, etc. You don't even need a Dutch oven, even though I have no personal experience of baking without one. That's the one special piece of equipment I happen to have. Sourdough can be extremely budget and minimalist friendly. Number 4. You don't need a scale either. Trust me, you don't. I have used these 2 measuring cups for every single loaf I made during the last 18 months, and the bread has been more than edible. Number 5. Wet dough is saveable. I've never thrown my dough away, even if it has been too wet or too dry after all the overnight fermenting. If it has been too dry, which has happened 2 times, I've made sourdough buns and baked them in a lower temperature in the oven. If it has been too wet, I've cursed a lot while shaping it on the counter and just added more and more flour until it has been hard enough. Couple of times the bread has stuck a little to the Dutch oven during the baking, but I've always got it out by just letting it cool down a bit and helping with a spatula. Number 6. If you make the starter yourself, it can smell horrifying at first. Like, wow, how horrifying. It got me about a week to get baking, and I was nearly ready to quit on like day 3 or 4, but it really got worse before it got better. Just keep feeding. Number 7. The starter might stay alive in the fridge even for 2 months without feeding. This is a fact my friend tested accidentally. I gifted her a piece of my starter. She got home, fed it and forgot it into her fridge for almost 2 months exactly. Then she just got it out and started feeding and then made her first loaf. The starter is really more resilient, we tend to think. Number 8. Drying starter is easier than it sounds. I mean, to me it started difficult. It wasn't. I just made extra feedings and spread a thin layer on a baking sheet and then waited for it to dry. Number 9. Starter and levain rise more in a plastic bag. This was also an accidental found. We had a dozen fruit flies in our home in August, and they always got their way into my starter, which was rising on the countertop. It was kind of gross. I got my starter in a jar in a plastic bag and it rose so much more there. Number 10. It's the best bread I've ever made. Store-bought just does not taste the same after getting used to your own fermented loaves. There's no going back for me anymore.